Right, hello everyone. My name is David. I'm the Director of Education here at Signature Theater. Thank you all so much for coming to this month's Inside Signature. For those of you who've never been to one of these before, the format is pretty simple. After a couple of announcements, I'll introduce our guest here, and then it will be a conversation between the two of us, and hopefully including all of you as well. If at any point my friends here in person have a question, just raise your hand good and high. We'll call on you at an appropriate moment. If our friends who are logged in at home have a question, they can just send it into the chat, and at an appropriate moment, a staff member will pass that on to us. So pretty simple format. Announcements. There's a lot, as always, going on here at Signature. Out of curiosity, who here in person has seen Penelope so far? Great. Who here has not? Come on. Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Penelope has been extended through the 28th of April. Please get your tickets. There are not a lot left. It's a beautiful piece, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. Other things coming up. This upcoming Monday, April 8th, we have the latest entry in our SigWorks series, staged readings of new plays by local writers. This next one is a new piece called Strangers with Benefits. Tickets are available online, and we hope to see you there. Coming up soon, opening here in the Max, starting on the 16th, is Hair. First announced for our 2020 season and finally happening many years later. Last couple announcements. We have our annual Sondheim Gala coming up on the 29th. At the Anthem, this year we're honoring Nathan Lane. If you have the money to buy a table or a seat at a table at the dinner, we'd love to see you. If that's a little beyond your price range, we do have tickets for just the award presentation at only $60. The last announcement I have, next month's Inside Signature, May 2nd, will be with Ashley King, who is the choreographer of Hair. She also did Ragtime here recently, also choreographed Little Shop, currently running at Ford's downtown. Getting a lot of work these days, and we're going to sit down and talk with Ashley about her work as a once performer and now choreographer. So we have with us today Jessica Phillips, who is playing Penelope in Penelope. Congratulations on the extension.
Thanks.
Yes. So let's start from the beginning. Where are you from?
Oh, that's really the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah.
Born in Nashville, raised in New England.
Okay. So how long were you in Nashville for?
My first 8 years.
Okay.
And then my second 8 or 9 years in Central Mass. And then I did my undergrad in Boston.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So Nashville, like music city.
Yeah,
do you
it's
think,
music city.
Like, do you feel like this is where it started for you?
Yeah, well, yes. Okay, so I have this great story about when I was young, and my parents were also very young and in graduate school and didn't have a lot of money. And when I was, I think, 2 or 3, there was a grant that came through Nashville for the arts.
Wow.
And so Nashville sort of pulled together all of these incredible classes and learning opportunities for kids for free. So my parents took advantage of it and put me in everything.
At 2?
I somewhere between, able to toddle and 8.
Wow.
But when I was young, certainly school age, I was taking dance class and acting class and baton twirling and everything they could put me in because, it was available.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely had an opportunity to explore a lot of things when I was a kid, thanks to an arts grant.
And parents were supportive. That's
Yeah. My parents are both in academia, so a life in the arts was foreign to them, really.
Mm-hmm.
And but my mom grew up in a home with a concert pianist.
Oh.
My maternal grandmother
Amazing.
was a concert pianist, and both of my parents sung in the choir. So my dad had a rock band when he was in high
Amazing.
school
Amazing.
that his mother managed. I mean, it's all kinds of fun stories.
Oh
Yeah. And they sang in the choir at church, and
Wow.
So the music was in our family.
Yeah, I
for
love
sure.
that so much. So do you remember what the first show was that you did as a child? Or what's the first show that you do remember?
Everything sort of got pieced together in this sort of haphazard way. So I was doing, by the time I got to high school, I was doing maybe 15 or 18 hours of dance class a week.
Wow.
And I was in the state chorus, so I was traveling to sing with a group. And I was doing the school plays, but only plays, straight plays.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
And then when I was a sophomore in high school, my mom said, you know,
there's a way to do this
have
all.
you thought about auditioning for the musical? And I was like, musicals are dumb. I'm not going to do that. Anyway, I did that, and I was cast, and then I think that's probably where the bug bit me, because I thought, oh, I can take my dance training, my musical training, my singing training, and my acting, and kind of piece it together all in one art form. And so I fell in love with that. And then over the years, of course, I have spread back out, and I like to do each of these things individually.
Yeah.
All of these disciplines I do individually.
Do you still dance?
Well, the body ages.
Yeah.
The body ages.
Got it. Totally understand.
But I enjoy it.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Well, and those of you who have seen Penelope, you know that there are some dance elements, right? So there are some balletic arm elements.
Yeah.
And for sure that my dance training contributed to the building of that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So you said the bug hit in high school. Did you think that this would be the career, or were there other options?
No, I mean, I really just thought this was, how I was going to spend all of my extracurricular time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I thought, when I went to college, I thought, okay, so I've got to find something to do for real,
Right.
And I went to a liberal arts college that allowed me to not specifically have to focus in the arts, but I kept gravitating there, and by the time I was the end of my sophomore year, I thought, well, I've got to make a decision. If I'm going to specialize in this and go for a BFA, I have to make that call now, and that's what I ended up doing. And then I thought, at that point, I think my horizons were broadened a little bit. I had been to New York at that point, and I'd seen a Broadway show, my first Broadway show in college, and I thought, oh, I guess maybe there is a pathway through this.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what that looked like. I didn't have a model for that, but I thought, now's the time to try. So, I went for my BFA, and then I moved to New York. I moved to New York and gave myself 5 years.
Okay, good for you.
And got a job as a waiter. And I'm a terrible waiter. I am probably the worst waiter you've ever met. It's bad. I don't multitask well. So it's good that I got a job in theater within a couple of months of moving, because I would not have been able to eat on the money I was making at a restaurant.
What was that first gig?
I did a show at the Carousel Dinner Theater in Akron, Ohio, which I think doesn't exist anymore. I don't know, but
I think it does. Yeah.
And then in the middle of that was a nice long, like a 5-month gig. And then in the middle of that, a group of us rented a van, and drove from Akron back to New York to audition for a tour of The Who's Tommy, which, as you know, just opened. The revival just opened on Broadway. And 2 of us were cast, and I was one of them.
Amazing.
Yeah. Amazing. And so I left Akron, came back to New York, and went right into rehearsals for Tommy, and then was on the road for a year.
Did you like touring?
I did.
Good for you. Not everybody does.
Right. But I was 23.
Yeah.
I was 23. I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't even have an apartment I had to rent out. I just was able to kind of get on the bus and go. And I was able to save a little money, and I paid off my student loans and set myself up to kind of go back to New York and have a fresh start. So, and, that job turned into other jobs with the same creative team. Nice. So, as these things go, work begets work, and I was able to, really start to build relationships.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Any questions so far, please?
Well, when my first Broadway show when I was 9, and I remember the actors, the play, even the thing that happened that wasn't supposed to happen. And I remember that vividly. So would you tell more about your first, just going to Broadway? It's like,
And I'm going to
Yeah.
repeat the question for our friends at home. No, I'm going to repeat all your questions for the folks at home, so get used to it. So our friend here remembers very vividly their first Broadway show, seeing their first Broadway show. I want to hear what about that first time seeing something on the Broadway.
Yeah, I think Les Mis.
Okay.
I saw Les Mis and Miss Saigon in the same
Wow.
trip. And yeah, I think Les Mis was first. And I had a similar experience. I was very familiar with the cast album, of course, because I was studying theater in college. And, halfway through Eponine's solo, she went up on her lyrics. She forgot her lyrics, and she just kind of hummed along. And I remember going, what? Nobody else knew. And, you had to have memorized the album, I think, to have known. And she, and of course now, having been a professional actor for 30 years and having gone up on my share of lyrics, it's a skill to just kind of work your way through that. But I just remember thinking, oh, the world didn't end. Nothing, the building didn't collapse. We just kept on going. Yeah. Yeah, great. She sounded amazing singing her la la la's. Yeah,
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I guess it was just that experience of like, oh, this seems tangible. All of a sudden, this doesn't seem like this is something that famous people do or that is not accessible to me in some way. And in fact, when I did book my first Broadway show, my first day backstage, the stage manager brought me in and walked me around to sort of show me the lay of the land. And she looked back at me, and apparently I was white. Lost the color in my face, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, I'm a little nervous." And she said, I'm going to use an expletive.
Go for it.
She said, "Same shit, bigger budget."
Yeah, right. Yep.
And I was like, okay, I get it. And from that point on, I was like, I got it. Okay, all right. This is what I know. This is what I love. This is what I'm learning to do. I can be up on a much bigger stage with a much bigger budget and much better costumes and wigs, and learn from the people around me. Yeah.
Man, I love it. Other questions? I saw one or two other hands. Yes, please.
One of the first things, besides the magnificent performance that struck me, was the beginning of the storytelling that you did. You basically talked about how your husband went after Helen and ended up with you.
Yeah.
And there are so many different ways that Penelope can take this, both as a reflection of her and a reflection of her husband. What kind of discussion did you go through for that little portion of the play in terms of how you decided you wanted to play things?
So I'm going to ask a precursor question, since we're switching into talking about Penelope, and then we'll talk about the Helen relationship. For the uninitiated, what is this show? Give us the elevator pitch for Penelope.
Okay, so this is a loose interpretation of Penelope's journey through the absence of Odysseus for 20 years. For those of you who are really well-versed in the
Homer.
Right, exactly.
Right.
In Greek mythology, you're going to find some Easter eggs in there that you'll enjoy. But for those of you who have never read it or read it, 20 years ago or 50 years ago, it's okay, because as you say, I do a little exposition to kind of catch you up on anything you might need to know. And honestly, it is so open to interpretation by every audience member that you don't really, the Penelope and Odysseus story is really scaffolding that is meant to hang on a very universal human experience of the 5 stages of grief. Or that is my way through it anyway. And that, I think, was predominantly the discussion that we had in the room, how to help Penelope weave her way through all of the things that she felt and experienced in his absence. And And so Helen really was a very small part of that. We didn't spend a lot of time on that section. And for me personally, I feel like it's, I see Helen more as a contemporary and not as a threat or any kind of, a hiccup in the road with my marriage to Odysseus, because I think, I think especially in the storytelling of this time period, what we don't hear, and what this show gives an opportunity to do is understand the female perspective through that story. And I would like to imagine that the women who were, by the way, running everything while the men were gone, making all of the decisions, actually were quite a team.
Yeah.
And enjoyed the agency they had at the time, and enjoyed the feeling of leadership, and I believe, and I would like to imagine that they treated each other with respect and equality and lifted each other up. That's my version of events.
Please.
I'm going to get started with an observation, not
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah.
There's a point in the play where you take on a real weighty power. It might be where you were singing where you didn't think you might need him to come home. Did I misinterpret that? But it's a very, very powerful scene, and I remember thinking to myself, this is what we need. We need a powerful, centered, been there, done that woman to run this country.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And not take any shit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I compliment you for putting that thought in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my question is really technical. A lot of the songs seem to the music seemed to discourage applause, in the sense that from the last note, a new note would be struck, introducing the next song. And I was wondering, obviously, it was deliberate, but why is that?
Right.
Yeah, let's talk about them. You're right. Several of the pieces don't have a clear button for applause.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? And I know some of that has changed too.
Yeah, it has. We actually added a few applause moments in there. I'm not sure if I'm the expert to speak to this. Alex Bechtel, who wrote the music, would probably have a better answer. But I mean, I think that in a piece like this, the idea is to elevate the storytelling element, the storytelling part of what the music does. And that is the reason for having the instruments on the stage, is to say, you know what, of course we have a voice here and a storyteller, but all 6 of these musicians, the 5 band members, are actually an equally important part of that storytelling. And so there's a way of structuring that music to sort of, bleed into the next in a way that maintains that, the breath, right? So that the audience doesn't really have a chance to think of each piece as its own celebratory moment necessarily, but that the piece in general. So to use the analogy of the weaving, right? So each thread is complete and beautiful, but if you wait and see what all the threads create altogether, you have a different kind of an outcome. So I think typically in rock operas or in traditional operas, that use of being fully played through is a device for maintaining suspense and tension. Yeah. Did you enjoy that, or did you wish that you had moments to applaud?
A few moments when I wanted to compliment you, but I think I gathered that what was going on. Certainly it was deliberate.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to start applauding.
Yeah. Some people have. I mean, some audiences have. They're like, I don't care what you're telling me. I'm going to do this.
Right.
Yeah. But I think, it's an interesting observation. And I think as in our rehearsal process, we did find 2 moments to add applause, because I was advocating for the fact that I felt that the audience really needed a moment to breathe out, and that was important. But I don't disagree that there might be more of those opportunities, and this is what it means to create new theater, new art, is to put it on its feet, put it in front of people and see how it comes to life, and then say, oh, these are changes we might be able to make to improve it.
Yeah, and it is something of a premiere, right?
Yes.
Knowing that you're not the writer, what can you tell us about this piece and where it came from, and then where you fit into the history of this piece also?
Yeah, so Alex Bechtel, who wrote the music, lyrics, and co-wrote the book, this story came from him, from an experience that happened during quarantine. So 2020 was a prolific year, I think, for many artists. Not for me, I watched a lot of TV. But those gifted writers took opportunities, and Alex was one of them. And what happened was he was quarantined in Philadelphia, and his partner was quarantined in Boston. And in their absence, their separation, he was grieving, and he was experiencing a lot of those what if questions, not knowing the outcome. When was he going to, see his partner again? If he was going to see his partner again, would their relationship last? And this music began to flow out of him, these questions of longing and missing and being reunited and the unknown end point, which I think many of us were feeling, right? And he, at one point, played some of these songs for Eva Steinmetz, who is his collaborator, a longtime collaborator of his. And she said, Alex, this is theatrical, And so then they began to work together on how to kind of create some sense of a book around this music and build it into a theatrical presentation like you saw. And Alex, for Alex, it was really important to have the piece straddle play and concert. So that's why the musicians are such an integral part of the storytelling, and they are on stage, and we pause and let them carry the baton for bits of the show.
That's great. And you came into this pretty late in the game, yeah?
I sure did. Yeah. So there was a third collaborator on the book, and that was an actor by the name of Grace McLean. And Grace was supposed to come and perform this piece that she helped to write, and is doing a Broadway show right now. She's doing in Suffs on Broadway, and became unavailable. And so about 3 weeks before rehearsals began, I got an email, and it had the piece attached and said, would you be interested in this? Take a look at it. And since I hadn't auditioned, I hadn't had a chance to get my mind around what the piece was, or even hear. I had never heard any of the music. So I took a couple days and read through it and listened, and I was intrigued. And then I set up a meeting with Eva Steinmetz, who also directed the piece. And we sort of got on a Zoom, and I was like, okay, catch me up. What is this? What are we saying? What's this? I love it, but what is your vision? And we had a great conversation. And by the end, I was like, okay, I'm on board. And then, I had about 2.5 weeks to sort of get myself ready. And then we got here, and I learned the piece in 17 days, I think. 17 days.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Please.
You were in New York at that point?
Yes, I live in New York.
Okay, and what did you know about Signature Theater that made you want to come down?
Yes.
Oh, I had never worked here, but Signature had been on my list for years. I mean, all of my friends have worked here. Everyone loves it here. When I said I was coming, everyone was like, Shirlington is the best. They were sending me recommendations, and it's true. It's like a studio backlot here.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
it's not
is.
even. It doesn't even feel real. I am so glad I finally had a chance to come work here. I just love it. I love it. Yeah.
Please.
What was it that made you say yes, and what could have made you say no?
Okay, so why'd you say yes? What could have made you say no to this? Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with the second half, which is I probably would have said no if Eva had said to me, we love telling patriarchal stories. You know, if she had said, this is really about what a great guy Odysseus is and how you were just content to sit and wait and respond to his every whim. You know, it was very important to me to tell a story about a capable woman that is not capable because of her partnership to a man. It is true that in this particular telling of the story, she genuinely loves him and longs for him and misses him and wants him to return. It's also true that she doesn't always feel like that, and that she genuinely enjoys being alone. She genuinely enjoys her, although we don't explore it a lot, her relationship to her son, her relationship to her, you know, what we call the servants, but the other people who share her home, and enjoys the leadership. You know, she runs Ithaca, and I think that's really badass for a woman of that time. And those are the kind of stories I like to tell and want to tell, and will sign on for. Yeah.
I mean, I'll say, like, I've not heard this, but I can imagine a certain kind of annoying audience member who could walk away from this saying nothing happens. She's just waiting for 75 minutes, right?
Yes.
Like, what do you say to that? Like, is that what's happening here? Or?
Yeah, I mean, there is a certain amount of that we see, but I think we also see how she struggles to maintain both ends of that spectrum, right? Like, she is very clear that she doesn't need to wait.
Yeah.
I believe she is. Some of that is just how I'm infusing it. But in the song you were referring to, the Resolution, she's like, I don't need to ask somebody outside of myself. I already have the answers. I already know I'm capable. I already know I'm fine by myself. I do love him, and we had a good partnership, and I long to be with him, but I don't need him to be happy. And so I do think there's some nuance in both the telling of it and in the receiving of the story to understand that humans are complex, and they are not all one. They are not all in one place in terms of how they manage their grief or their longing or their joy. That we're capable of holding multiple realities, and that when we watch other people struggle with holding multiple realities, that's interesting.
Incredibly. I love that. Thank you. Yes?
You talked about how you came into this production. You're thinking about how you started working on the road ensemble. That means you've had the experience where you walked in to roles that have been defined by one, two, or more performances.
Right.
And you've had to come in and adapt to whatever it is. And here you have the chance to actually have a significant hand in forming the character, placing the beats, helping decide where the emphasis is on that. Can you discuss the difference in your approach and what you have to focus on between those two?
Yeah, so talk about stepping into a role versus working in a premiere.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid it's perhaps spoiled me for everything that comes after this, because it was so joyful to be able to walk into this process and know that the material was constructed, but that it was going to be built onto me. And that meant that the keys could be specific, the keys of the songs could be specifically, built around the meat of my voice. That all of the blocking, the movement came from impulses that I had that we then just solidified and kept. Even though, just like any kind of show that I would step into, the text was already there. The text and lyrics were there. The gift was just knowing that I could say, I'd love to take a moment here, or I'd love to add this line here. And that the creative team was entirely open to that. And and I'm trying to answer more specifically your question, but it's interesting because I think the creative team trusted me so much to know instinctually what those beats needed to be and how I needed to, create growth or connection from one piece to another, and that's what's so new and different in a premiere like this is for the to feel like I'm on equal footing with the creative team in such a way that we're all building it together, and we're building it on my body and on my voice and on my emotional instincts. It was glorious.
It's amazing. Please, right here.
I was wondering, since it's essentially a one-woman show,
Yeah.
in many ways, has Penelope evolved as you've done this run? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
has it changed? Not just the character in your mind, but you've discovered.
Absolutely, yeah.
How does this show change, especially because you don't have partners to play off
Right.
of in the same way? So how is it evolving with you?
So, I mean, this is a thing that happens in all sort of long runs, which is that over time, we hear ourselves differently, or we bring something in perhaps that happened during the day, and it infuses our performance in a way that sort of lights up something new. In this show, that happens like tenfold, because, as you say, it's like I'm not hearing other people's lines differently. It's really about all of the internal processes that happen. And yeah, I mean, every single show I'll have a moment where I'll think, oh, I didn't think of it that way before. And it'll impact a choice that I make, either in terms of where I'm looking, or how I'm holding a glass, or how I'm touching the piano keys, or the way I say a line, or the way the silence hovers in a certain moment. And I'll be able to think, I'll have moments where something new will occur to me in terms of what my internal storytelling is, that is not necessarily available to everyone in the audience, but absolutely drives the choices I make in the storytelling. So yeah, so performances, if we're paying attention, while we're in them, grow over time, and mine has definitely grown in a way that I'm really excited about. Yeah.
Thank you. There was another question, please.
Yes, I'm not a big TV fan, but I know that you were Pippa at one point
Yes. Yeah.
in SVU,
Uh-huh.
which is one of my few favorite TV shows.
Yeah, mine too.
And just curious to know what it's like to work with that kind of, it seems like a terrific ensemble of actors.
Yeah.
And probably people behind the scenes too.
Yeah.
And as a career thing, it was something different for you away from the stage.
Yep.
So talk about working SVU.
Yeah, okay. So the first 15 or so years of my career, I didn't do any television. Honestly, I was a little afraid of it. I was afraid as a theater actor I would be too big too performative, and I just didn't have confidence. Then I did a Broadway show called Leap of Faith, opposite Raul Esparza, and it was a big flop. We were only open for a couple of weeks.
Oh.
It was a big heartbreak. But in addition to working with Raul, I worked with a man named Warren Leight, who was he wrote the book to the musical, and he happened to be the showrunner for Law & Order SVU. So after the show flopped, I had about a 6-week period where I thought, I need to be brave, and I need to take some risks professionally. And so I sort of opened myself up to this possibility of doing some television. And I started auditioning. I booked a pilot. It was a comedy, actually, a half-hour comedy, and shot it, and was around a lot of comedians and very theatrical sort of stage performers. And I got a sense of what it would be like to sort of translate my skills on camera. And then the second call I had was for Law & Order. So Warren had written me a part. They weren't sure where it was going to go. And so I went in, I was cast, and then my first day on the set, I just didn't really know. I was so green, I didn't know where to stand or what to do, and I just sort of let people kind of place me. And yes, this ensemble of actors, spearheaded by Mariska Hargitay, had been working together for years, and it felt like, like a theater troupe. It felt like a theater cast, because they knew each other so well, and they were able to sort of just feel each other's thoughts. And I felt really safe with them. And they have a lot of experience with, theater people who come over and do a guest star. And so they were great with me. And because Raul was then as a part of that cast, I had a buddy. And so that was good. And then I recurred on there for 5 seasons, which was really exciting. And I learned a lot. I learned how to relax and not have to work so hard to be, try to get everything right. And television is a director's and editor's medium. So I'm coming from the theater where you have one chance to get through a monologue and get it right. And on TV, it doesn't matter. I could say that monologue, I could mess up 9 different times in there, and the editor's just going to cut that out and piece it together so that it is the final product that they want. And once I learned that, I was able to kind of enjoy what I was doing. But yeah, they are wonderful over there. And all the Dick Wolf shows they run so smoothly like a machine. They were really great to work for. And if you're listening, I'm available after April 28th.
Thank you. I love it. Break a leg. Related to that, you talked about worrying about being too big, going into television. You've played some big houses in Broadway, touring houses. These are pretty large spaces. Let's talk about the arc. Do you feel like you have to adapt? Are you using TV skills to play that smaller house, or is it
I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, I mean, I learned my craft in a black box. So I think it was sort of going back to my roots there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are moments in this show, those of you who have seen it, that there's a 3-minute segment of nothing but what's happening on my face.
Yeah. Yep.
It's so small. And yeah, I mean, the idea, the adage that people say about TV is like, the camera can read your mind. You don't have to try to act. the camera picks up every small movement in your face. And so if you are thinking something, the camera's going to pick up that emoting. And in some ways, this little piece of Penelope is like that for me. It's like, I have a full 3-minute experience inside that moment. And I'm not worrying about trying to tell that experience. I'm just having it and trusting that everyone can feel it because it is an intimate moment in an intimate space. Yeah. And it's lit beautifully, and I'm told I can't see it, but
and what's going on musically in that moment is pretty stunning.
Yes, just spectacular music underneath it. So yeah, I think it's a lot about trusting that it's enough. And I have said that really about this whole experience of like being a solo actor is really, I have to trust that what I'm doing is enough, that I don't need to try to compensate for the fact that there are not other people up there. Yeah. I just need to be grounded and confident that I'm clear about the story I'm telling and trust that that's going to be enough.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thank you. Right here, please.
Excuse me, can you talk a little bit about the music? It was such an interesting choice of instrumentation. And what was it like to be on the stage with the musicians all the time? And the entrance and exits, one by one. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Unpack the musicians and your relationship with them and what they are in the story, if you can talk about that part.
Yeah, I mean, Alex would be a better person to answer why he chose those particular instruments. I know that at this point he believes it was sort of just meant to be that.
They sound like the ocean.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, they are just stunning. And it was such a gift to have them come into the rehearsal room for the first time and be able to bring the piece to life, knowing that they were this undercurrent of everything that I was saying out loud. But yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of this particular piece is that it's open for interpretation, but I can tell you that for me, the way the show begins and ends, I'm going to talk carefully for those of you who haven't seen it. The way the show begins and ends for me is crucial in terms of how Penelope's decision to bring each of these musicians in. I think that we are watching her construct her own dream that we're all a part of, right? And then at the end, we see her again where she started. And that, I think it's such a gorgeous structure for telling that particular version of events.
I love it. Barbara, did you have a question?
Yeah. Is there any plan to take Penelope anyplace else?
Is there a plan for Penelope's future? I don't know if we're the ones to answer that question.
Yeah, I don't know. That is the hope. That is the hope. I know where there's a hope to make a cast album. There is a hope to carry it further down the road. So if anyone would like to write a big check, now's the time.
I don't know if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But jumping back to this question we just had about the musicians and what you were just saying, and you probably aren't going to want to answer this, but I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
Who is the audience for her? For Penelope, who's the audience in this story? Because there's a relationship there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's up to the audience to decide who the audience is.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally.
I think there are multiple ways through that story.
Yeah.
For the audience. And Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of theories. You know, I've heard people theorize that different instruments represent different characters for them.
Oh, interesting.
And I mean, I think it's all valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Love it. One of the things that I've seen the show twice now. It hits me like a brick just how personal this show feels in the writing and the performance. It hits me on a very personal level.
Yeah.
What is it about the show, do you think, that just feels so personal? It doesn't feel like there's a separation between the artists involved in the story. It feels like it's all coming from such a heartful place.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, this is it's a universal experience, right?
Yeah.
We have all experienced loss. We have all experienced longing. We have all asked questions about our place in the grand scheme of things, and you know, in the small confines of relationships. And so I think when you have an opportunity to watch someone live out all of those different emotions, all of those different human experiences, as I like to say, the 5 stages of grief, I think you can't help but feel like that person is telling your story, right? Like we feel connected to the human experience when we watch other people live it out that way. And so I think this show is so beautifully constructed because it's so intimate, the space is so intimate, the musicians are so, tangible because they're right there. I think audiences feel like they are inside of the story and that they know Penelope because Penelope is a reflection of some part of their own experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's really beautiful, moving stuff. If those of you who haven't seen it, see it. Okay, good.
Yeah, I can just add that. I mean, what struck me about it was, you know the myth, and so you know that she was, very loyal and smart because she was fending off the suitors. But that's really all you had. What I came away from the production of was that how tough she was, how strong, and that you don't really get from the myth.
Right.
But because there's this tapestry and you see what she's going through, and there are all these nuances, and it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And you can see that as a mother, as a wife,
Right.
all these different, it's like, oh, that I relate to, and wow, can I do that?
Right.
So for me, that was kind of wow, she was one tough cookie.
Yeah.
She was able to do it.
Yeah.
Penelope for president.
Right.
Penelope for president. Yes.
My husband.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like you said, I'm just going to recap for our friends at home, but even coming in knowing the myth, we walk away feeling so differently about her because we do see this toughness, this intelligence, this perseverance. Like you even brought up her strength as a mother and a wife, but then we find this separate identity discovery too that's really beautiful. It's a terrific piece. Yes, please.
One of the other things we haven't talked about is temptation, and all the temptations that she presented with, and how she wrestled with them, and imputes motives to the people, to the men who are around her. Did you want to talk a little bit about that, and how you, as an actress, thought about that?
Yeah, let's unpack the temptations that come Penelope's way.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you know the myth, you know that there's a lot more to what happens with the suitors and the slaughter and all of that is not in our story. And I think it's interesting. I just had this conversation last night with a friend of mine who came. That I think that the suitors I don't think they need any more stage time.
Yeah.
Because I think in some ways they're not important to what it is she's actually struggling with. I mean, to your point, she's strong, she's tough, she's figured out a way to trick them into thinking that they're going to win and they're not. And I think, she's made it so clear that there is absolutely nothing redeeming about them, that it really is just a problem to be handled. But that is a separate struggle from this longing that she actually has to be cared for and loved and to have companionship and to feel desirable and again a relatable part of the human condition. She knows enough to know that the suitors are not going to provide that for her, and she's not looking at them to do that, and nor is our piece looking at them to solve that problem. Again, they are just a nuisance to be dealt with. And I think, what we see in stories like this about strong women and their sexuality gives us an opportunity to, again, see the conflict between this desire that she has to have companionship and the attention that she gets over here, which are in two different buckets, right? They are not. This is not to be ogled. Does not feel the same. Is not the same experience as to be loved. So, I think the piece definitely tries to paint that picture of how much these suitors have disrupted her life, but I'm pleased that it doesn't go any further into building her life experience around this, how they infringe on her space.
Yeah.
Pardon me? Yeah.
I like that they made it was feminist without pushing feminism.
Mm-hmm.
She was just doing it. And the suitors, I think it was also the assumption that, she needs a man. But she wasn't
right.
pining for her husband. She was loyal. But she
That's
wasn't
right.
stopping her life until, in fact, she was mad midway, right? Why did you turn around and went away for another 10 years? How dare you?
Right. And it's interesting because the concept of loyalty to me can move over into sort of a negative area if we were to think about it as she had nothing better to do than to just wait for her husband to come back. I don't see it that way. Yeah. I see it as quite discerning. Her loyalty is not necessarily to him, but to, as we hear in the last song, to us, to their partnership, that she was perfectly happy and capable and fine running the city and being alone. And she knew that, obviously the suitor's motives were for the power. And she didn't need companionship. She didn't need to share that leadership. She was perfectly capable on her own. I believe, my feeling is that her loyalty came from a place of true affection for Odysseus, and that she didn't need anything until she was ready for either his return or a decision to live on her own.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Did I see a hand? Sorry. Yes.
This came to me after I left the theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, because you see something like this, you don't just see it walk up and go down. You think about it. You think about the interpretation, you think about the nuances. And one of the things, I am a mythology geek, that's one of the key questions. I'm thinking to myself, I wonder what lucky son of a bitch he was, considering what he put her through.
Mm-hmm.
Consider what happened to Agamemnon 10 years earlier when he came home. That could have happened to him, and he probably wouldn't deserve
Hmm.
I don't even know how to recap that
Right.
one. Okay. Odysseus is very lucky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We're winding down to our last couple of minutes, so I want to pivot away from Penelope for the last couple of minutes. You mentioned this being your first time in Signature and how you'd heard
Yeah.
about the glorious Shirlington.
Yes.
What have you loved about your time here so far?
Well, I'll tell you, I've got this cherry blossom tree right outside my window, and I have watched it go from bare to completely in bloom to now turning green.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is my honest answer. That has been
magic.
the highlight of my time here.
It's magic.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are so many beautiful restaurants in this street and the bookstore, and I've loved it here in Shirlington, but also this theater is really special. The facilities here are incredible. The people who work here are wonderful, generous, thoughtful. Even the programming of this season has been spectacular. The way it's so thoughtful, the way they have pieced these 3 shows about war and different relationships to war back to back. It's really, really smart programming. Yeah.
Thank you. We are happy to have you here. Favorite shows so far in your career?
This one's very hard to answer.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like children, right? You love them all for different reasons. And I tend to like the one that I'm doing currently the most each time. But yeah, I mean, I think this piece is so special because the last show I did was Dear Evan Hansen on Broadway. And when that show closed, I thought, you know what I'd really like to do? I'd like to write my own solo show, but not like a cabaret. I really want to script it. I want to script a solo musical and maybe build it around something in my life. I'm not kidding you. For a year and a half, I've had this idea. I've put some things down. I've talked to a few different people. Every week when I get on with my therapist, he's like, how's the writing going? And then this fell in my lap, and I thought, oh, okay. The universe is smarter than I am. The universe is like, I'm not letting you get away with not doing this thing that you have dreamed. So I feel like I sort of conjured up this show, this character, this piece, and it was serendipitous, and I feel very, very, very lucky.
Yeah. I love it. Dream roles?
See above.
Okay.
Same answer.
Yeah. Great. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see this piece continue on. Yeah. I'd love to see what happens if we're in a proscenium stage or if we have projections behind us. Obviously, we wouldn't want to lose its intimacy, but like, what would that look like in some other kind of a theatrical setting? I really would love to see how this piece goes forward and grows.
You mentioned earlier, you said you've been doing this now for 30 years.
Yeah. I know, I just dated myself, didn't I? Yeah.
How has the industry changed? How has the art form changed?
Well, I think the divide between commercial theater and art, theater for art, is wider because everything's, art's expensive. Yeah. Theater's expensive, and it's gotten more expensive. And I think, in the last 10 or 15 years, we're going in a direction of converting either a book or a movie into a staged musical, mostly because people then know what to expect. And I think that there's a higher chance that people will then, drop a couple $100s on a ticket to see a Broadway show, and they are counting on that to get butts in seats. And that's hard because it means that that our creativity has been stifled some. When we have to adapt something that already exists,
Mm-hmm.
we have less freedom than if we are creating something from scratch.
Right.
But creating something from scratch is really risky.
Yep.
And we have it's an opportunity to lose money, and that's tough in this kind of a economy.
Yeah.
But that said, I really believe in the power of the pandemic shutdown. I really, truly think that in the next 10 years, we are going to see the benefits of what it meant that artists had to sit still and be quiet, and that our entire industry was shut down.
Yeah.
And we had no other choice but to wait,
Yeah.
sit and wait.
Right.
And I'll exclude myself, but those of us who are writers and creators, I know have done some incredible things that we are going to now see brought to life in the next decade. I believe in it.
Yeah, I do too. I guess my concluding question today, you talked about that wait during the shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of artists moved on to other things.
Yeah.
What kept you? How does this feed you? Why did you stick it out?
I think that I've had multiple points in my career where I've thought, I really can't do this anymore. The cost is too high, to the stability of my life. I'm a parent, I have to pay college tuition. I have to, put food on the table. So I've nearly abandoned it multiple times. And the pandemic was a close one for me too. But I think ultimately I believe and I trusted that when we hit rock bottom, as all humans, we are forced into understanding ourselves better, and the next version of ourselves holds this layer of life experience and rich understanding that we didn't have before. So that death gives birth to new life.
Yeah.
And I knew deep down that if I could make it through, just from a logistical standpoint, financial standpoint, that I would have something more to offer as an actor. And I do.
You do, and
I do.
You've shown that to all of us. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we'll
Thanks.
see you again soon.
Thank you.
Okay.